We are ready to step into round 9 of the day here and the final round of this Swiss part of Masters Tour Bucharest. And there's been a ton of Hearthstone being kicked out today, Sol. And we're going to hit the final one. We're going to decide who is going to make that top 8. It's a pretty big deal for all these players because back in the day, many years ago.
Oh, settle in. Story time.
When we were casting a ton of, like, Swiss was just the format for Hearthstone Majors, right? And there were many of them throughout the years. It was really all about, it was a big deal for players to make top 16 or top 8 because you could win a tournament and place well and gain, popularity, gain the prize pool, of course, and all of that. But there's that on top of that exists now, Grandmasters potential for many of these players. The list is relatively large about who can still make it into Grandmasters if they perform so far. And as you can see there, Orange must be feeling fantastic. The only player 8-0 going into round 9 is glorious. And honestly, we've known Orange a long time now. Excuse me. And he takes the hits maybe the hardest out of a lot of the players when things are going not good for him. And I'm not saying like he baby rages or anything, but he feels it. He feels bad, right?
He kind of baby rages.
A little bit. But honestly, with the amount of effort and the amount of years he's been putting into it, we know he's also like very grateful for moments like this where he's managed to nail it. He's 8-0, top of the game, and if he ever needs to do well, it is this tournament.
It absolutely is, and what a story it would be to just immediately bounce back from that heart-wrenching relegation in the previous season to immediately come back at the first port of call. But I don't want to focus entirely on Orange, as much as we love the guy and are potentially rooting for him. There's a lot of names on there that have very, very important round 9 matches. Language Hacker and some of the other Americas players are really fighting it out for what is a not very strongly contested spot in terms of the Grandmasters qualification for the Americas region. You can see here some of the interesting statistics being pulled out here. Priest actually running at sub 50% in the tournament up to this point, and a lot of that has to do with the Rogue win rate, which you see there. Isn't it? Priest 35% against Rogue. Rogue currently, based on the statistics in this tournament, Rogue was the bring. It is the highest win rate deck in the tournament. It's generally being brought in a Ban Shaman kind of lineup, which means then the power deck that you're looking to beat with your Rogue is the Priest. And you can see there that is working. 65% win rate on the Rogue side up against Priest.
And honestly, I think it's very, very impressive that so many players thought about Rogue because I think it would be very easy to kind of continue to put Rogue on the side. It didn't gain too much from the new cards, not really, and it's just the fact that Rogue's been so underwhelming, I guess, for so long that to go, I'm going to bring it to maybe the most important tournament I'm going to play this year is a pretty big deal, but it's paid off for the players who made that read massively because we've seen, that percentage is ridiculous. Like that matchup, even if you can just say, in half my games, I beat Priest with Rogue, that's insane.
Yeah, it absolutely is. And it's why, practice groups...
I'm so impressed.
It's why practice groups... All right, calm down a second. It's all right, it's fine. It's why practice groups are so important in that kind of position because you do really have to be able to buck those trends and really break from tradition where, Rogue hasn't been played for a very long time, but finding that Rogue, finding that one deck that is the bring is such a big deal in a tournament like this. Back on the Orange train again, he is a huge player here. It's still in there. Possessi, of course, is a player who was very high towards the top of the prize standings coming into this, continuing to have another strong performance where he can consolidate that spot. If you're already towards the top of the prize standings, you can choose to say, well, I'll take a back seat and just, stick on what I've got and hope that no other APAC players get up there and challenge for top 4, top 3, top 2, top 1 that it will take to overtake me. But Possessi very much matters in his own hands right now because he's still in contention for top 8 to add to that prize money pool that goes a long way to the qualification into Hearthstone Grandmasters for next season.
Yeah, and it's something I respect a lot about a good chunk of these players is that, Possessi was already looking fantastic for Grandmasters, of course, in Asia Pacific, but you have to go to these tournaments to be able to solidify that. I was looking through the list of Asia Pacific players, and this is no real shade at the other players or anything, but there was a good chunk of players that if they placed well, they'd be in GM, but they aren't here, right? So I know there's qualification process and such, but if you qualify and get to all 3 Masters Tours for this year, as an example, then and then can pull it out of the bag. Well, you've worked hard. and you've performed well. So for me, there's no more deserving players who come through this system because it is so difficult and so demanding of the players that a player like Possessi, not only has he done it kind of once already in terms of the performance, but he's doing it again here. And if he does make it to Asia Pacific season, Grandmaster Season 3, I'll be very happy to see him there.
Yeah, and just back referencing the graphic you were looking at a second ago, if you were wondering why Zim and Torf were like the notable players who had bad records and weren't in contention, that's because they have had success in the others Masters Tours, and they are top ranked in their region's prize standings up to this point. So for example, Torf is currently 3rd place in the updated standings for the Americas region, but the fact that he cannot pick up any additional prize money from this tournament is a huge deal, because that gives the potential for any of the remaining Americas players to overtake him and push for those top 2 spots. And Zim is the player who has $25,000 to his name in terms of the order of merit in Europe. But again, the fact that he's at 4-4, unlikely to pick up any additional prize money, means that the Europe region is wide open for someone like Orange or another European player to get 1st or 2nd and potentially overtake him into that Grandmaster spot next season.
Yeah, and you just saw the players getting ready. I know we're just talking about stuff, but we've not spoken in a while, to be honest. Not really hung out.
We just fancy to catch up. We're going to break out a cup of tea in a second. Yeah. A couple of crumpets. I could murder a crumpet right now.
Loads of butter or not?
An insane amount of butter.
I agree. Yeah. You leave it for just like 20 seconds to just melt.
Yes.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Same wavelength on this one. That's weird.
It has to come out incredibly hot, just enough for the butter to fully melt in, and then you let it cool a little bit before you actually
And also,
eat
if you don't try and pick it out and it burns you, it's not right.
Yeah, too cold. Leave it in there.
That's part of the ritual.
100%.
We do see the players getting ready for this one.
Crumpets are the nuts, guys. All right, you have no idea.
Yeah, no clue. And there's another player we know very, very well who is purple, and he can hear us. He's not. Who's a bit of an idiot, to be honest.
Once gameplay starts, they do put on sound-excluding headsets so they can't hear us talking. That would be a slight issue.
Imagine that. Yeah, I think he should really go for this play here. Thanks.
Yeah. I don't know about you, Raven, but I really feel like Purple sucks, don't you? I really hate that guy.
He's laughing on the other side. I can't see him, but he is laughing, I can tell. But anyway, he's getting ready, and a Purple, definitely a player who brings an almost wild card effect to any tournament he plays in, not only in a lineup choice scenario, but even a play style scenario. I know for many years when Purple's decided to really focus on the game, he is hailed as just one of the best players in just seeing lines and getting the job done.
Yeah, I believe it was you and Derek that was casting that Alan Numbers series yesterday, and I don't remember which one of you it was that said it, but one of you said, this feels like he's playing a Purple game here because it was so unusual. He was fatiguing the control deck with his aggro deck, which is something that like Purple and Firebat and so on talk about a lot and really take pride in being able to do in certain situations where plan A of being aggressive doesn't really work out. So yeah, Purple is really king of the mountain in just finding those weird win conditions. We saw a beautiful game in the Americas region in Hearthstone Grandmasters where his subdue his own Shivala play was the absolute nuts that just completely solved the game, interestingly enough, against Firebat on the other side.
Yeah, it's really cool to play, and it's one thing I really enjoyed about being able to cast that Allen match was just there's still tons of different ways to play Hearthstone, and no one's figured them all out. And I feel like Purple, again, is just definitely one of those players who is able to make it work.
And then you can see the Americas standings as they were coming into this tournament, and Torf, as we mentioned, a player that is not picking up prize money based on his performance in this. So he started the day at 1st. He's already dropped down to 3rd just based on the already existing standings. So that means that he is not a Grandmaster for next season because he is stuck on that 3,500, and over 2 players have already overtaken him at this point, which means the Americas players who are still in with a chance, Empanizadu, Papa Jason, Language Hacker, and so on, those have all got the good news that Torf has dropped down and not picked up additional money in this tournament.
Yeah, and as we look at the Asia Pacific breakdown as well, this is kind of what I was talking about a little bit earlier, where I believe, unless my mind went blank as I was reading the updates, that Suni is not here. As in, he's not playing in Bucharest, which means that, yes, at that point he was 2nd and technically in the running for Grandmasters. If anyone else does well, or better than 7.5k, obviously, then he's lost it, and he wasn't even here to play, which I think is just one of those points I was raising earlier where if you're making a serious push, you kind of have to just give it your all.
He may have come. I'm not entirely sure whether he was here or not. I certainly can confirm that if he was here, he dropped out early and did not pick up any additional money. So he is locked on that same situation as Torf, locked on that prize money and just hoping that people don't overtake him. But it's looking kind of likely that that might be the case because we still have multiple APAC players, Hone included, who's going to be in this matchup coming up that can pick up huge chunks of cash for top fours or above to be able to rocket past them in those standings.
Yeah, and Hone is a player we've not talked about too much because we've just been looking and talking about Purple.
Oh, good. He's got his headset on, so we can say nice things about him now without inflating his ego too much. That's awesome.
He's all right. There we go.
Yeah.
Done. But Hone does have a previous experience in the playoffs as well. He is not a truly new name to competitive Hearthstone, but honestly, he isn't, an all-star from the Asia-Pacific region, right?
Sure.
He isn't along there with, say, Shansu, Surrender, Tom, Shaxi, even Tyler, and just many of the other players. One, you'd have seen in Grandmasters, but two, you look at Tom and Surrender, who have careers spanning years, and then you look at players like Kranich as well, from more of the old-school style. So he's just not a player you would have seen too much of, but he is here, he is in a good score, and he's looking at good right now, and I am extremely happy to see a double warrior ban.
We do have some deck information finally, and yes, it is looking like we're going to have a double warrior ban here. Paladin Shaman Priest versus Mage Shaman Priest on the other side. Interesting stuff. Mage being an underperforming class in the tournament so far. I believe when I checked to take out some anger on Raven saying too many nice things about Druid on the broadcast, and I looked at the stats. Mage was the lowest win rate class, with Druid second last, but having rechecked at the end of round 8, I believe they are now tied, Druid and Mage, for the lowest win rate classes in the tournament.
And look at this, Sol. I spot me, that was a Control Shaman, I believe, with N'Zoth. And also there was the, I think it was the Res Priest as well for Hone, whereas Purple has the Reno Mage, the Evolve Quest Shaman, and then they're just playing with my eyes now with these graphics. But yeah, we see the Brilliant Decoy there. And is that a card you like? Because I know Derek loves this card, but there's just never really been a good enough space for it.
I think it's a sweet card, first and foremost. Like, I think it can, troll your opponent in glorious ways. You can win a game of Hearthstone with Blatant Decoy that will make your opponent want to uninstall the game, which is one of my favorite things to do in Hearthstone. But I do think if you're going to put that card in your deck, you have to have a very clear justification for it. And what I mean by that is, you expect X deck, and you're playing this deck, and you don't want to concede too much percentage. For example, in the N'Zoth Priest specifically, if you're just playing board-based decks, other mid-rangey decks or other late-game control decks, N'Zoth Priest crushes almost all of them.
Right.
But suddenly, if you start walking into Shivala Paladin or Malagos Druid, for example, then you are actually, that's almost completely flipped. You almost just concede those matchups
it's
to the
almost
combo
just a hard
decks.
loss.
So you need some kind of tool to give you some kind of win rate in those matchups, and Blatant Decoy is one of the cards that's able to do that.
Yeah, and we'll have to see how it plans out because both players bringing unorthodox lineups, but also different unorthodox lineups. It's not as if these are two players who have gone, we've gone for, say, Strat 3, and they've come with very similar lineups, but they're very weird in terms of how the meta plays out. They're both bringing some very strange lists, and honestly, I don't even... With how unexpected these two lineups are to clash, I don't even know who I think has any form of favorite here. I don't even know who I'd lean towards in how these decks interact.
Yeah, I mean, it's so
weird.
It is
we're going to learn as we go.
We are, yeah. I mean, we haven't really been breaking down too many Control Shaman matchups on stream because we haven't seen any. Same for the Mage, the N'Zoth Mage from Purple. Really haven't seen how it comes into play in terms of the stream matches, although we can look at the stats and say that Mage is underperforming. And generally, the stats that are reported on Battlefy are stats by class.
Right.
So in that case, we can see that the majority of mages, if not all the mages in this tournament, are going to be varieties of Reno Mage. So we can see that 44 or 46% win rate that Mage has in this tournament, whatever it was, is a true representation of Reno Mage as a deck.
Right.
Whereas Shaman, we can see that it has 52% win rate. It's one of the better decks in the tournament, but that's majority going to be leaning on Token Shaman and Quest Shaman. It's not going to be accurately reporting how well Control Shaman is doing, which is kind of an outlier that I doubt many other players outside of Hone have brought to this tournament. Although with a field of 287, you never know. There's probably a couple more sprinkled in there. Yeah, exactly.
Well, I was talking to this to Lorinda as well earlier on, in that even if one of these players with this kind of outside lineup fails miserably in this matchup. They're not bringing their lineup to beat each other here, right? Like, that's definitely not what they're doing, especially Hone with his very anti-aggro lineup. I'm pretty sure he wants to farm some of the players we saw earlier, like Pain, who brought quad aggro. So then if you bring such a heavy control anti-aggro lineup, that's who you want to farm. And the lineups here, although, you know, we're going to be casting one match of Hearthstone between these two players, you've got to think, how good is it versus the field, right? And what is the field? Is more of the field aggro than it is control? If so, then even though his lineup looks a little bit strange, you've got to say that he got it right, because on average, he should face more aggro lineups.
Yes, and this was a kind of lineup, like Hone's lineup, that I kind of theorized and joked about coming into this, where I said that, like, there's going to be that guy, right, that just brings N'Zoth this, N'Zoth that, N'Zoth the other. And the guy that essentially is the nightmare of the Swiss bracket everywhere, because he's always the last guy hanging on, because he's just playing N'Zoth mirrors with everyone every single time. Because as soon as you bring 3 N'Zoth decks, every round you get matched up against the other guy that's bringing the N'Zoth decks, as evidenced by the matchup that we have, because Purple has the N'Zoth Mage and the N'Zoth Warrior himself. It's interesting, because I was just thinking about this as I was making a note of the deck list that we have in this, that it's actually the 2 N'Zoth Warriors that are the go-to bans on either side. Because I don't think they're necessarily like the most resilient decks in terms of like what some of the other decks can do with just multiple N'Zoths like coming out over and over again. But looking at it, like it's not like there's a N'Zoth rogue here that can just scheme all their N'Zoths over and over again. So I guess the threat of Warrior with like a Lysiana or whatever can really go a long way in terms of just being the favorite in most of these fatigue-heavy matchups.
Let's finally get into it. Hone on the top is going to be on this Paladin, and Purple's hair, there we go, is going to be on the Mage on the bottom of the screen there. And already you just start to see one of the few differences here where Hone does have this this Highlander Paladin with the secrets. And I don't think we've cast this deck, even though I feel like we've both cast it every other time we've cast this weekend. But what do you make of this Paladin so far? Outside of the high win rate thing and so on, how are you feeling about it? And more importantly, how are you feeling about that play?
The play was fine. I'm just very confused as to why Zephyrus substituted the Animal Companion for a backstab there when it was a 2-3 on the board.
We saw that yesterday.
With a 2-3?
It was a 1-3, but it couldn't have been killed.
But it was Inner Rage, right? That's the card that was substituted for it, which made sense.
Wait. Oh, no, sorry. It was an Inner Rage.
The 1-3 was on this side of the board, and the Inner Rage makes sense there because it was high tempo. But the backstab there is really unusual looking to me. But sorry, what was your question before I got confused?
You weren't listening. Do you like Paladin?
Highlander Paladin?
And we've heard the high win rate, highest win rate deck and all that. But honestly, just from watching it, how are you feeling about the deck?
That backstab makes way more sense, by the way. Sorry, what was your question before I got distracted?
How does it feel to cast with someone who hates you?
I do like Highlander Paladin. Genuinely, like it's something that I've been trying to avoid more and more as I try to continue to improve as a Hearthstone player. Whereas I am aware that one of my flaws is that I do hold inherent biases against a lot of decks. And the Highlander aggro decks was something that I could feel I had a bias against for a long time. So I just spent some time playing Highlander Aggro Warrior, Highlander Aggro Paladin, like the frozen version before the secrets came into it. And then when this deck came out, again, initially, I was like, what, one of every secret on one mysterious challenger? Like, no, get in the bin. That's obviously garbage. But then I started seeing it reporting incredibly high win rates, so I started playing it again myself. And I do honestly feel it's an incredibly efficient, just board-based tempo aggro deck. And I think we're seeing a lot of players being very successful for it. And if you look at the stats for this tournament as well, Paladin is pushing above 50% win rate and is also securing a high win rate against Priest, which is kind of what you want a deck like this. It's the job you want it to do in the tournament.
Tick box as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah.
Going to see now Finley as an option, which I think is really, Finley being available early game is so huge for me. I know, yes, you could say, well, late game into life tap is great. It's like early game into any damage is also great. And having a 2-3 available is pretty huge there. Going for the Blessing of Kings means that he's just going to be pushing more damage, which I definitely don't mind with that Leroy in hand. But now we're going to see Finley and boom.
Does Ballista Shot just end the game here? I think Ballista Shot ends the game here. Skadoosh. Take 3.
The secret there is more to, mess with Purple's thoughts than anything, because I don't think Purple's going to have a minion that gets to attack this game.
It's more he had 1 mana, so he played his card that cost 1. But yes, you are right. It does have some disruption effects in terms of representing the other secrets.
Ray of Frost still going to do a really good job in terms of just slowing this down a little bit. And also, there isn't quite Leroy hero power yet. But still, there's just nothing even matters, does it?
Oh, it's coming, though. Hero power into hero power Leroy. The only thing that Hone is going to think long and hard about here is, can I also beat Conjurer's Calling on this Mountain Giant? That's something that he has to consider, because that can throw out the 2 Grave Horrors, which can then mess with his Leroy connecting through. But even then, like, just hero powering through the Grave Horrors for a couple of turns.
Leroy now?
Sure.
Just Leroy, put him to 3 health.
That is a way to. That is certainly a way to do it. You are not wrong.
I think I would, right? Because there's no punish that wouldn't really punish you anyway in a different manner. So this just looks fantastic to me. Tell Purple, you heal next turn, or it's out. It's not, oh, I need to roll a taunt, I need to freeze the boards. No, you heal next turn, or it is game. And Sottle, as far as I can recall, none of those cards in his hand heal him. And that is going to be a concede. Hone taking a very quick game number 1 there with this Highlander Paladin. And again, it continues to impress me, and I don't know how it does it, but I feel like Highlander Paladin just super curves every game. And I think it might either be the deck is just built very well to do that, or I'm casting a small sample size to this deck.
No, like, honestly, again, it was one of my fears with the deck is like, okay, you're playing this aggro deck where your goal is to like curve out, be aggressive, play minions, but in a non-zero number of games, you're just going to draw secrets in your early game. But then looking at the stats, actually, some of the secrets are actually reporting some of the highest win rate, drawn and played win rates in the deck. You know, like Avenge and stuff in the early game is actually one of the most powerful things you can do. So like there is actually very little failure rate with the deck. Like the redundancy of so many similar cards doing the same thing is actually pretty effective. It's a surprisingly effective deck. I was as surprised about it as you guys were.
Yeah, I'm not sure if we're allowed back on camera. Maybe we're too ugly at the end of the day.
I think it's quite the opposite. We are just too darn beautiful that we were distracting everyone from what's important. That's the game of Hearthstone.
There's one card I do want to ask you about this Paladin list, just while we work out what's going on with the next game. Is that where do you stand on is it Pharaoh's Blessing? +4/+4 Divine Shield.
Yeah.
Do you like that card? That's not in Hone's list, but it's a card I definitely feel has super impact in a game.
I loved it in the old Highlander list. I thought it was a really, really powerful card. But there are... Hi, we're back. But there does have to be some kind of concessions made to fit all these secrets and Mysterious Challenger in there, right? Like, there's a lot of cards that go down. There's other things that are surprising to me, like Magic Carpet being cut away. And yet the Samwas Queen remains in the deck, which just seems so unusual to me at first. Because again, like Samwas Queen was a card that I looked at. I was like, it's kind of trash, but like I get why it's there because it's so sick.
It does enough stuff.
It's so insane with Magic Carpet, and it's so insane with History Buff, when you get those curves to go off together in the early game. But then suddenly the Magic Carpet gets removed and we're still playing Samwas Queen just because of the amount of stuff that it represents in one card. And it's kind of got that Dark Peddler effect, where it fills so many different curves depending on how many ways you want to play it. Like it's
just another thing.
It's a 2-drop and it's a 3-drop and it's a 4-drop, or it's your 2-drop and a 1-drop on the next turn alongside the 2. Like you can do 25 different things with it depending on like what kind of curve your hand has. And that kind of flexibility that we've seen in cards like Dark Peddler, in cards like Firefly, for example, just to split up your resources and play them in the way that makes sense is a really, really powerful tool in Hearthstone.
Yeah, and I think it's really good overall just because there aren't too many cards that do that. So have a couple that do, right? Just to fill those gaps. But we can see there that Hone has his Shaman and Priest left versus Purple's full lineup. Again, just to remind you of that Mage, Shaman, and Priest himself. So again, it's just a bit of a mixed bag in terms of decks. But even with that Paladin win, do you think Hone with his Control Shaman and Res Priest is going to be good enough? Because I feel like now the decks start to get a bit slow. Yeah, well, very slow compared to Paladin, and that where Purple's Mage can make things happen.
Yeah, I mean, certainly if you are playing slow matchups, then like Pocket Galaxy is the ultimate Jhin card in a lot of situations, just to be able to do ridiculous things that the other deck can't compete with. But Control Shaman is certainly not a deck that I've seen perform very well. There was a week or two where Viper brought Control Shaman to Hearthstone Grandmasters in Europe after saying that he felt like after the nerfs or after patches that came in, not the card, patches didn't come back. That guy didn't come back from what. Why didn't they rotate patches back in? That would have been the nuts.
There are no pirates really to play.
We'd find some. It'd be fine.
Bring back Buccaneers.
We just play Bloodsail Corsair. It'd be totally fine. But yeah, there was a couple of weeks where Viper was playing it, convinced that it was the nuts, was talking about it in interviews, was having a lot of success. And to be honest, there were a couple of games he threw away with Control Shaman, that he would admit himself. But just based purely on win rate and looking at results, it did not seem an impressive deck when we saw it in Grandmasters. And I really haven't seen it make any kind of waves in terms of win rate on ladder either. So I don't have any like logical basis to be able to say that like this is a real deck that does a job, apart from theorizing about what it does as part of a lineup. And even then, like, I'm falling a bit short looking at Hone's lineup that there wouldn't be a better deck than this N'Zoth Shaman to play instead. Yeah,
one thing I would really like to see, maybe we can find that out after today or maybe just some point tomorrow, even after the tournament, is just how Hone's lineup did versus Rogue lineups. And versus Rogue specifically, because again, like if you just found a weird lineup that dumps as Rogue, and Rogue's the bring for all the players, you have this weird, like, you go all so far around that you end up doing pretty well in terms of just heads up. It looks like the players are in, because that looks like a mulligan to me.
Definitely see a mulligan on that screen. Rejoice, everybody, it might be happening.
It's Hearthstone time. Oh, it was worth a try. I wanted it to pop up.
If you fail to do that, people will clip it and send it to you. That happens. I've had that myself. Really? It's very traumatic. Yeah.
See, the big thing for me is I never try these cool things because they never work for me, so they make me look worse.
I mean, the one time it comes off, though, that's the one everyone remembers, right? That's the nuts.
Not for me.
No, okay.
They just remember the 1,800 other times.
So we did just get word. One of the observer accounts has failed and disconnected, so they're just trying to get that back up and running. That's what's causing the delay right now, so we apologize for that, and we will get you back into Hearthstone action as soon as we possibly can.
Yeah, I'm just choosing to imagine that Purple sat there just starting his novel, or maybe his memoirs, as he's just writing on that paper. But it looks like we are in, so let's get into it. Shame.
I would 100% read Purple's memoirs. Like, I'm sure that is a fascinating story.
I'd love it if Purple, just at the end of the day, every day, just post his thoughts.
Of course it's the right way.
Had a coffee. And just his musings on the day's happenings. I would subscribe to that.
Woke up today, ate some food, went to the bathroom, played some Hearthstone, hang out with Soleil for a bit, went to bed.
I'd be like, fantastic read, fantastic read. When's the next one coming out?
It's Purple is here on the Quest Shaman here, though. Again, this kind of fits the slow, grinding nature of the lineup that he's brought here, not bringing the explosive token Shaman, instead setting out for these hard-fought wars, going to the long game with all of these decks. So yeah, Quest Shaman here instead of the token Shaman. I think this deck against N'Zoth Priest in particular, it's a slow one. It's a very, very grindy one, but it is a very, very good one for the Shaman on the surface. They have a variety of ways to get this job done. Firstly, they can just go hyper late and just be able to exhaust resources from the Priest. Secondly, they can just save up a large amount of burst damage and just get a bit of minion pressure through early. And then when the big N'Zoth board comes down, you can just Kobold Lackey, Wasp with hero power over the top at the end and just burst them out. Thirdly, this can happen where you just make the big boy board early on and then you're just running the train.
And fourthly, they can do stuff like actually just generate Hex, which plays with this Priest a lot as well, right? If you put one Hex into the pool, you remove, say you Hex a Kartut, well, that's a big deal because Kartut's the stabilization tool for the deck. And also, it just adds a frog into the res pool, which can really mess with stuff, especially when it's like Katrina that it can mess with.
Yes.
In terms of just, well, only reses one minion. If that's a frog, then it's a massive problem. But I like this approach from Purple. Kill him.
Yeah, and I actually think against Hone's deck in particular, going for the kill them so they're dead strategy is actually very, very important. Because Hone does play the Hakar the Soulflayer in his deck.
Right.
And that's important because if you go super long with Shaman, you have to be scared of that card in particular, Novice Engineer. I think it's important in this matchup that you don't play too many Novice Engineers in the matchup. You avoid Bog Sloshing them, you avoid Baristering them, so that when you eventually play your Shutterwalk at the end of the game, you don't overdraw yourself into 6 ticks of fatigue. That's a problem that only gets so much worse when your opponent is shuffling Corrupted Bloods into your deck from Hakar the Soulflayer as well. So because there's that additional threat, I do think Purple has to focus on being aggressive in this matchup as best he can.
And also, on that note, I really like the Bog Slosher on the Questing Explorer, because that will not draw a card post-quest, but it will right now, which is best of both worlds for Purple here.
Yep.
But now this is where things... Don't get me wrong, purple's looking great so far, but it's where things start to get better for the priest.
Go back, go back. He wants the rush. He wants the Darius.
Because this is where priest starts to go, never hit me in the face ever again.
Yeah. And that was some look-away trading from purple there. He just had to suicide his minions into that Kartut defender and did not even get the full clear off the board.
Ugh.
There's one Kartut defender, just such a massive roadblock to purple's plan.
Now, I wonder, do you think, is this worth a seance just to get a second Kartut defender for next turn and then use Forbidden Words to kill something off?
I don't think so, because he has Katrina next turn anyway, right? Which just is another Kartut defender. So I don't think he needs to be able to play a Kartut defender when Katrina can just give him one anyway. Turn 9.
Because this might be a game where he wants to slam us off on 10.
Sure. If that's the case, then there's actually still just a reasonable world where the 5/7 lives anyway, and you can just seance it afterwards. Right now, his turn 9 is looking like it might just be play one of his 9 mana cards, which seems very reasonable. So I would expect the seance to get held here. Sorry.
And honestly, after this Forbidden Words on the bigger minion on the board, with 18 health and only 5 damage available on board for purple, Hone has to be feeling pretty safe right now. There's no real way he dies.
All right, Kobold Lackey number 1. Those are important in the matchup, as I mentioned. Being able to save up, big damage.
Let me just check if purple's committing some kind of crime here. No, he's not.
Sorry, what was the crime?
I cast a Quest Chamber match last round.
Yeah.
Didn't run Barista. Blew my mind.
All right. Fair enough. Does he also still play the Witchwood Piper as well as the Barista? Because I've seen people cutting that as well to make room.
One Witchwood, yeah.
Make room for the Desert Hare Evolve. Like, some stuff has got to go down to make room for those cards, though. But without having looked specifically, is purple cutting down on mind control techs?
He is not. Oh, purple's just playing like 35 cards.
I thought that would have been a very safe bet.
No, only running 1 Corrupt the Waters.
Ah, okay, yeah, that's where he's made the cut.
That's only 1 Mutate.
He's cut out 1 Mutate, he's gone down to 1 Bog Slosher. Okay, fair enough. And then obviously the former champs and Giggling Inventor slot is empty. That's the one that everyone seems to agree on.
And that was the trick, though. It was -1 Barista +1 former champ.
I will say that, like, we did see in playoffs at Grandmasters that the deck was just lacking a little bit of chunk in the mid game, right? Like, there was a lot of situations where the board was cleared or whatever, and you just needed like a reload. Like, you didn't just want to play a bunch of 1/1s on that turn. You wanted to play something big that hit your opponent. I think that's where the lack of former champ does really come into things.
Acts as one of those Pachunkios.
Yes, exactly.
Master Red's going to come down now, and those are going to be some Kartuts at least, and obviously the additional rares. And this is where things start to get unfun if you're a deck trying to actually kill someone this game, because he's just healed twice. They come back again, and it never really ends. That's good for just denying the continued res, because there's no good way he could have killed everything this turn.
Yeah. Well, I mean, yeah, it was a problem that he did not have a solution to. Like, the Kartut defenders are problems in the sense that they're annoying. They're stopping purple executing plan A right now, which is kill your opponent. But they're not actual board objectives, right? Whereas the Katrina is. That thing has to be dealt with, and purple didn't have a way to deal with it that turn.
Also not the worst evolve target in the world either.
Just a random Tauren warrior just comes out of his Katrina. Yeah.
I'm back. But yeah, because this board, or maybe at some point purple wants to slam and evolve to make these, 0 attack minions or 1 attack minions do something.
Sure.
An 8-drop going to a 9-drop. This 9-drops are pretty good right now. So even though Endless Resurrects are obviously powerful in themselves, it's definitely not the worst extra minion to have on the board for a really big dude that can take down some of these bigger taunts.
Yeah, 9-drop is a 7-8, a 7-8.5-ish, so you can round up to a 7-9. It's 8.6, I guess, technically. So 7-9 on average, which, is not that big of an upside, I would argue, compared to the 6-8 that you already have that's rezzing things.
I think it's not on average like a downside, because the rest of the board he might want to evolve.
Yeah, sure. So the highest ratio of charge and rush in the game as well in the 9-mana slot, to over 25% to get a charge or rush minion at 9.
That's the clone.
There's that Hakar. There's that blatant decoy.
There's every legendary minion in the game.
Hone just had to be a little bit careful. A little bit careful. Just pay at least lip service to the idea that this blatant decoy was going to come out, because the disaster would, of course, be the blatant decoy pulling his own N'Zoth out of his hand. But he does have cheaper minions right now, so that is not an issue, which made this good timing.
I'm rubbing my hands together with glee at the prospect of this mind control tank.
Yeah, I'm curious as to whether it gets used. I was about to raise the question on the first one as well, because the mind control techs are actually super important against the actual N'Zoth turns themselves. They can actually be a big deterrent to your opponent even playing their N'Zoth if you still have both of your mind control techs remaining, because you can just get such a huge swing turn against their N'Zoth board, which is the exact opposite of why they're playing that N'Zoth in the first place, right? Like, you can actually tempo out against their N'Zoth, which is absurd. But I think the first mind control tech that Purple played, like, he didn't have the answer to that Katrina, so it had to come down.
I've got a question for you.
Go on.
Was that Novice Engineer ever a mistake? No res, and the Novice Engineer played with hero power?
Possibly. I'll take that argument for sure. It's definitely worth thinking about.
And now the scariest part is the fact that N'Zoth and Seance are reduced.
Playable.
Which means, N'Zoths for days. Also, I get... So with this decoy, I was going to say, how much do you think Hone really wants to just play Psychopump? Even if it's not the best turn, it avoids it being pulled out and causing a bit of an issue.
Sure. Yeah, I can see that.
Is that like a higher priority than having a better turn, so to speak?
Does he have a better turn, though?
I don't know. That's what I'm asking, kind of.
Right. I mean, N'Zoth Seance is a better turn on the surface.
Yeah, N'Zoth is strictly a very powerful turn.
Yeah, but it's a powerful turn on literally any turn of the game, almost. So you can kind of reserve to it being the last thing you do a lot of the time. The thing I do want to focus on this turn instead is that the fact that those Corrupted Bloods have now gone into the deck, which completely changes the dynamic of this matchup, because the Shaman can now no longer just start to, weave their way through to fatigue quite safely. They're in the position now where if they keep playing Novice Engineers, and if they draw their Shudderwock and start playing that, and that draws cards, then they're going to be on a, 2 or 3 turn clock, just to those Bloods popping, like, even if the Bloods are at the very end of the deck.
Yeah, it's going to stack up very quickly. There's just a Lore Walker choke, because why not at this point?
Yeah, I mean, that's exciting. We've signed ourselves up to a little fiesta of a game here, Raven.
And honestly, though, what does Purple even have to do right now? Obviously, we have the benefit of knowing there's N'Zoth Seance, so we have more information than Purple right now. But is there anything he really has to do to effectively win this game? Because I feel like now he's past the point of no return. It's like almost unwinnable with the knowledge we have.
He's about at that point, yeah. He needs to continue to be aggressive. He needs to save up for burst damage. He needs to get into positions where his Shudderwock is representing decent damage in terms of life drinkers finishing off the game. And he needs to continue to generate lackeys for them to be Kobold lackeys or spell lackeys that can give him extra reach. Because
Bloodlust being the easy one.
Bloodlust, yes. But Hone can always just react to there being random spells in hand, right? Like, I don't think an experienced Priest player in this matchup is going to let you play an Ethereal Lackey, have, a Bloodlust board, and just not put taunts in the way to prevent that, because they have the ability to just do that for the rest of the game.
I guess it's more a board like this, if it's just on the same turn. If just like kind of insta out of nowhere. They can't clear defend against every single board most of the time. So then is it just, out of nowhere, you just try and pop it off? And Hone now has gone for the N'Zoth, but didn't Seance. And just floated the mana. I'm baffled at this point. Honestly, I'm going to check something.
What are you checking, Ray?
We won the right deck list.
No Shudderwock available for Purple to be able to activate both of these MCTs again, so he's going to use Sandstorm Elemental to clear off as much as he possibly can here. I'll tell you one thing, I am extremely excited to see as to what Purple's game plan is from here on out, because we set it up for him at the start where we said that he is the king in terms of finding creative win conditions in different ways through the matchup.
hope he draws bloods quicker.
Yeah, I mean, that's the other thing. I mean, it's also just a 9-4, right? Like, you can't just, like, leave it on the board, smacking him in the face.
But my question really is, what is the Seance for if it's not for N'Zoth? Because
well, I think it's not. He's not intending to use it for something else. He just doesn't want to give a Seance to purple because there's a Lorewalker Cho on the board. So he's just going to wait until the Lorewalker Cho gets killed and then use his Seance to copy whatever.
Oh, okay. I guess, like, was a guaranteed N'Zoth for you better than a Seance X for them?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know, right? Like, they can maybe Seance a Shudderwock, but I don't know how much of an upside that is anyway, because Shudderwock is playing Novice Engineers for purple in that position. Like,
the reason I was checking the list was just in case I wasn't 100% that Home was running Elysiana or not. Because that would make sense.
Sure.
You Seance the Elysiana and say the Bloods will win.
Sure.
He isn't.
Sure.
Playing Elysiana, so that's not a thing either. I just wanted to double check.
Yeah, I mean, I don't necessarily agree with that decision, but I think it's 100% the reason that it didn't come down. Yeah.
Either way, he can do it this turn if he wants to.
He can, and this will be the signal, right? Because now the Lorewalker Cho is gone. Okay.
Well, I think in a roundabout way, it's pretty good because it just pulls cards from Purple's hand.
Yeah.
He's just not letting Purple play the game at this point, even with these decoys. It feels really weird that decoy's good not to, like, snipe a specific minion or pull the Zephyrus. It's like, no. You just have less cards to do things with. It's crazy. And, as you mentioned, he does get the N'Zoth, so all's well with the world again.
Actually, I'll tell you where Seance would have been powerful for the Quest Shaman is on just Kobold Lackeys, on, like, a burst turn to end the game. That's potentially what you play around there by not doing it. I think that does start to make some sense when I think about it.
At first I was like, is Saul going to say for Priest it could be good to Seance the Shudderwock somehow?
No.
What battle cries have I missed in Priest? I was like, nope, not at all. It's just damage to face.
Right. But, you know, if they get a turn where they just have, like, one Kobold Lackey, one Wasp, and, like, whatever else.
Even Hero Power Life.
Yeah, exactly.
Seance,
right.
I mean, honestly, the way it played out was fine. I think I would have just been a bit too scared of, but what if they kill my N'Zoth? Is my Seance good enough elsewhere? Yeah. I honestly do not have enough experience with this deck to know the answer to that question.
I think the answer is probably yes, because Hone really from this point just has to clear board a few times and wait for these Corrupted Bloods to start kicking in for purple. Like, he doesn't actually have to land an overwhelming board presence, right? Yeah, exactly. He doesn't have to win, he just has to wait for his opponent to lose at this point.
Well, this isn't an evolve turn. Maybe the strongest evolve turn I've ever seen.
Yeah.
I don't know what is. What was that charge? Double rush.
Just replaced his 8-mana Walking Fountain on the left to a 7-mana Walking Fountain on the right. His turn is just so clowny. First Blood does land for Hone, though. Even with dramatically more cards left in his deck. 17-6.
And that's the problem, isn't it? Because there could be another 3 turns before Purple has his blood pulled. But the second that 1 happens, then 2 is going to happen, 3 will happen, and then he loses the game.
I don't want to have my blood pulled. That sounds horrible.
For some reason I'm going straight to, instead of, you give blood for, like, to help out and stuff.
To the phlebotomist.
Instead, it's just like a pint. Yeah, just pull a blood. It's like, ugh.
See, this is a really random, gross conversation.
You started it.
I definitely didn't. You said it.
I was referring to the game. You just started being like, even that's weird.
You are weird.
It's true.
I love you for it.
That was weird.
Now we're getting weird.
How deep do we go? Most importantly, though, Purple's got 6 cards left.
Are we still doing phrasing?
Hope not. One of them's blood, and there's 1 Faceless Lackey in his hand. He's running out of ways to play the game at this point, and there's still that decoy in hand for Hone, which means that this Lackey is probably going to hit the board this turn.
Dude, that Ziliac shot to the 0-3 stealth. The actual nuts. All right, does still end up going down to the other attacks, though. Just the Jiraxxus left on the board, but the Bone Wraith and the Sylvanas still end up coming out the other side. That Spirit of the Shark actually wasn't doing Purple any favors, because if there was a Shudderwock draw, for example, Shudderwock would just be unplayable because of the Spirit of the Shark. Like, I think Purple would just die to Fatigue and Corrupted Bloods at that point if he played it.
The game's unplayable right now for
sure.
Purple. Even the Sylvanas is a little bit annoying because the Jiraxxus has so much health.
Right. Well, Hone, this turn, would you like to win the game or win the game?
I'm wondering whether it's Hero Power Pass and just really win the game.
He has decided to win the game. Does it go into the Jiraxxus? Does it ever go into the Jiraxxus? Does that make sense?
No.
Am I talking madness?
Yes.
Why am I talking madness?
Because it just doesn't matter, does it?
Well, that's not a reason not to do it. That's a reason not to do anything. It's a very nihilistic way of looking at Hearthstone.
Welcome to my world, son.
Okay.
I sit there, stare at the game, and like, does it matter if I make a play this turn? Really? No, just end game. Purple doing his best, though. He's not technically out of it yet. But most importantly, I think for Hone here, blood is dodged on this turn, so he's not digging himself into, because he's already won in as well.
Right.
So he's not digging himself into, wait a minute. If there's like just one push and maybe a life drinker with hero power left, is there any way with blood into blood that he dies?
Answer, no, not really. Not when the 311 gets stolen for the other team.
There's another.
And the Ragnaros comes out to start pushing the damage. And
there's
there is blood into Shudderwalk.
Yes!
That
Finish
is
the
lethal. Purple, he sees the lines, he spots the lethal. You guys are going to get to watch some fireworks to potentially end this game.
Purple's loving it. Look at him. He just loves chaos.
He does. The true chaotic neutral of Hearthstone. Boom! Corrupted Bloods to the face. Purple has lost. He has fallen to 1-1. But most importantly, he had a good time.
And that's all that really matters at the end of the day.
The real Corrupted Bloods were the friends we made along the way, Raven.
Okay.
Yeah.
As long as we can pull one as well later on. So we'll go into... It's all just winding me up now. We'll just go into... take a look at the lineups now. Oh, actually, no, we're not. Hone is going to go 2-0 up against Purple. There's still enough to play for, and it wouldn't be the first time we see a reverse sweep at all. It's still all on the cards as Hone just has his Shaman left. But we are going to go to a quick break while we let Purple and ourselves recover from that game. We'll be right back with game number 3. Are back and getting ready to go into game number 3 between Hone and Purple. Purple currently 0-2 down. Hone taking the lead here quite convincingly with his pretty, I would say, obscure lineup, and it's only going to get weirder as his last deck to win with is going to be that Control Shaman. But it's again sort of Control Shaman, but it still has some of those big kill turns, right? It has N'Zoth in there, it has Hakar, just like we saw from the Priest. So it is control, but it has a way to win games, right? Whereas I feel like there are some control decks in the past that are just, I just hope to kill all your stuff, and then you lose.
Yeah, and it's almost going to make it equally difficult for the Shadowbox Shaman to now get a win for Purple, because it has to win this matchup now, which means that it just runs into that exact same problem, where we're just going to march towards that inevitable conclusion. Because the reason that these decks can play Hakar, we've only really seen Hakar get used in, for example, like combo decks like Druid, where, you know, the Bloods get shuffled and then
it's OTK style.
And then yeah, swapped over and all that kind of nonsense stuff. But there's also the other way of doing it, where you just say, there's a lot of decks in the game that draw a lot of cards right now. I'm going to draw 0 cards and just play Hakar in my deck, and then they're just infinitely more likely to die to those corrupted Bloods than I am. And that's kind of the strategy that Hone has gone with quite consistently throughout his lineup, and it does give Purple a real issue. Like, Purple might have just had the cursed lineup here, like for this series in particular, now that we really look at it play out.
Yeah, and not only is it about drawing cards, but these decks he's drawing Hakar in have a lot of heal as well. Yeah. Walking Fountain, as well as some of the other tools. You know, he's even running an Omega Mind in the list as well, so there's tons of heal. So even if you're on toe-to-toe or slightly worse off with the Bloods, well, you can heal way more than most Hearthstone decks in the game can at this point. So let's go into it. Maybe the last game here, if Hone can take a 3-0 and go up to that 7-2 score. The winner here has a chance at making the top cut, I'll say.
A very outside chance,
yeah, the loser has a 100% chance of not making the top 8 cut.
Correct. That is a much more definitive statement. I think I said at the end of the last game as well that Purple fell to 1-1, which I'm just realizing I said, which is absolute nonsense, obviously. I don't know how he could have lost at 0 wins and somehow got a 1 next to his name instead. Clearly he is 2-0 down, and like I said, he is going to struggle with some of these decks now to get a win over this Shaman. I think in typical Purple fashion, he's just going right back to the well again and saying, well, I got to get a win with this deck eventually. I'm just going to, you know, rip the Band-Aid off immediately.
Yeah, imagine that. Hone wins and he just goes 1-1, and we're like, well, Purple did say he takes weird ways to win the game.
That is true.
He takes different lines.
That would be creative.
Here we go, though. Hone not having tons of stuff to do right now. There's just the general early game of draw some cards, make sure there's enough answers. Because I think that's the thing he has to contest with the most is he doesn't want to cycle through his whole deck, because then Hakar's a bit of a problem, of course, as we discussed.
Yeah.
But he needs enough cards to actually just not die.
Right.
So I think it's him just walking the line there is going to be the real tell here. And yeah, I think Fort Lightning just seems like a reasonable pickup. Could even coin it this turn if he really wants this Life Drinker dead.
It's the second time I've had a player suggest Fort, or my fellow caster suggest Fort Lightning, and it then be taken by the player. Fascinating. The card is just omni-garbage, and I don't understand why people even take it or created effects. I guess you can afford to have the overload here, which, by the way, you weren't accounting for the Haunting Visions discount on when you were describing what was going on. He doesn't have to use the coin there, but I guess in a control deck, you can afford to take that overload a little bit better than when you were playing like Quest Shaman, for example. Because I've seen it, I've seen it a lot of times, like, oh, you know, like Fork Lightning, like clears the board here, it kills 2 health minions. Yes, and then you don't have a turn next turn. Like, it's miserable.
I would suggest something like that, Saul. I only suggest in the control decks. Also, Fort Lightning did receive a buff recently.
Was that one of the cards that you can cast with only one target? Okay.
But now the follow-up isn't too bad. Even Spirit the Frog is actually a really nice pickup, because you can at least more or less control the amount of card draw you get from it. It's not like you play Spirit the Frog and have to turbo out all your spells.
Right.
You could just be like, oh, well, you know, I want this spell. You know, you can go for the Haunting Vision to draw a Hex and just say, okay, I've got a Hex if there's a Mutate. Saul's confused.
He plays literally 1 Voltaic Burst and 1 Lightning Bolt in his deck as 1 mana spells.
All part of the plan.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, like I was about to say, he does have a very limited package in terms of the Spirit of the Frog business. Again, because it kind of fits with that Hakar strategy that he's going with in the deck, right? He doesn't want to draw a million cards off this Spirit of the Frog. So he is quite limited, like 1 Lightning Bolt, 1 Voltaic Burst in the 1 slot, and then just those 2, no, just 1 Witch's Brew in the 2 slot as well. And then just Haunting Visions and 1 Plague of Murlocs in the 3 mana slot as well. So he's never going to have like these incredibly insane chains with the Spirit of the Frog through his deck. It just kind of does enough to just pick up 1 or 2 cards here or there, which is kind of exactly what he wants it to do.
Well, I'm pretty surprised at. No Zephyrus. Look at this list.
There is a ton of one-offs in this deck.
And there's enough card draw, you could argue.
You're not wrong. 1, 2, 3... Wait, hang on. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 duplicates in the entire deck. It's not that many.
So far, though, I think Earthquake's never a bad pickup, especially versus Shaman.
Agreed.
It's just 7 mana, get rid of the board, move on with your life. And having, even though he's already got one, having more than one isn't bad either. Big Bad Voodoo, I think, is not really that good here. And Blazing Vacation feels way too wide in terms of, well, yes, you want to remove boards against this deck. Take the one that does that. If he Sludge Slurpers here, he won't be able to play an Earthquake next turn, so I think it's mainly just giving it a thought, but I think the outcome will be Hone just passing here and letting him say, well, even if you evolve, it's unlikely to evolve into all charge minions. So then you can just Earthquake it away and be like, I traded your evolve plus hairs for an Earthquake, and I have a spare Earthquake.
The 10 bunnies! The ultimate 10 bunny hand! It's actually happening! Of course, it doesn't. Just hand space is a thing, so he doesn't actually get the 10 bunnies, but that is a reality of the situation where Hero Power into Desert Hare into Barista is just a full hand of Desert Hares, even from an empty hand.
A beautiful thing. And again, I think many players in Purple's position there would have evolved.
Yes.
And Purple's like, wait a minute, I can just push damage for free?
But here's the thing, and again, we're entering into Purple is smart and he understands territory, because look, it already pulls the Earthquake out because he knows there is 0 Lightning Storms in Hone's deck, there's Hagatha's Scheme, and there's Earthquake. If there was an early Hagatha's Scheme, it would already do 7 damage AoE. If there's Earthquakes, it would already do 7 damage AoE. So the board of 1/1s is actually equally likely to pull out the same cards that are the same level of AoE from the opponent as the Evolved board is. So now he gets to just go Desert Hare into Evolve, having pulled the AoE out, and then say to Hone, we'll have another AoE, good luck. And then even if he does, Purple can just completely reset the situation yet again and be able to say, oh,
okay. Look at Purple. Purple just enjoys Hearthstone when it's at its most chaotic.
I'm sure I was making a point then, but I've completely forgotten what it was.
Your point was insignificant compared to what's happening in this game right now.
Yeah, all right, we take those.
8 mana Shudderwock, 0 mana Lackeys. Oh, this is the game of Hearthstone. Oh, Plague of Murlocs with these bunnies.
Yep.
Purple's just going to make waves of threatening minions and say, yeah, the second you don't AoE this, he already saw that Hone used a discovered Earthquake. Oh, Hone's sitting up now. He's like, okay, this game just got spicy.
Oh. Hagatha is a heck of a card, though, Raven.
Yeah. Mermies, though, too. Survives.
But the hits are going to keep on coming. This is a reason, like, people are legitimately just playing Plague of the Murlocs in their deck now. Even some players, like some players who are banning Priest have had a Plague of Murlocs in their deck just because it is essentially another activator for the Desert Hare. It does, you know, overwhelmingly upgrade a 1/1, even just within a random Murloc most of the time.
It's a problem I have a lot of the time. I'm just always ahead of the times. I was saying Plague of Murlocs was pretty good before the cards came in.
Did you have Desert Hare in your deck? No, you didn't.
No, but that's what I mean. It's like I can accidentally see the future.
You were playing Plague of Murlocs because you were scared of Priest, and the Plague of Murlocs didn't even do anything in that matchup.
And I knew one day it would be good. I knew it. I foresaw the future.
Sure.
And it had Murlocs in it. And even if these aren't the best Murlocs in the world right now, it's another wave of minions. Purple is still putting on pressure through 2 Earthquakes. and a Hagatha that pretty much cleared his board.
Yep.
Incredible.
Hone does look like he's going to have an uphill battle on his hands from here, and I think, again, that's the point I was making. Purple understanding weird win conditions. And he certainly got himself to a point where just each wave of these bunnies that he duplicated represents such enormous threats. And then you saw the speed in which he played that Ethereal Lackey turn as well. He knew exactly what he wanted. He picked like 4 spells in like 6 seconds, just immediately just snapping the things that made sticky boards, the Plague of Murlocs and the Ancestral Spirits. Just things that are activators for his Desert Hares, essentially.
I will say this Walking Fountain, though, is very, very strong. Not only does it recover a lot of health, of course, but it kills off a lot of the threats here. And Purple is kind of running out of threats. He has a lot more bunnies, but he doesn't have anything to particularly make them great right now.
Sure. I was curious about the Walking Fountain potentially being used in the same turn as a Big Bad Voodoo that's in hand for Hone there, but I think he did have to react to the board. He couldn't just let that thing hang around and be continuing to push away damage.
Knowing that there's still Spell Discover in his hand as well means that Bloodlusts, all the Murlocs, you know, whatever, like maybe things just go more wrong than they do right in most cases. But Purple, going to play the 100th bunny of the game, I think.
Yeah, okay, all right, deal. We'll make a deal with you, dear viewers. When we pass back to Purple's turn, we're just not going to say anything. Just assume he's going to play some bunny rabbits and then buff them in some way, because that is going to continue to happen every turn
for the foreseeable
for the
future,
remainder of the game.
Job's done.
Oh, those are some big bunnies.
Okay.
It doesn't buff them all, though, does it?
No.
The bunnies don't make duplicates of the one you play. They make Desert Hares.
Yeah, Desert Hare reads summon 1/1 Desert Hares. Still good, though.
I mean, it's got 9 on one unit of its abilities, so
Yeah,
I
very
like
true.
it.
Hex still available for Hone, though.
It's probably as good a Hex as he's going to realistically get here.
Yep.
I don't think he can afford to just take 9 for some reason.
Yep. I kind of feel like you don't attack this turn, because what is the point in attacking? Like just board locking
What if he
Purple
just
here
sits there, yeah.
is probably more effective than just letting him play a minion. Yeah, completely agree with this.
I think although Purple's doing the flashier things, I think Hone has played very well. Not only this series, but this game.
Sure.
In that this game's gone weird, yet Hone's just keeping, I think, a pretty steady head here.
Right.
Which is very important when you're the one in the control seat.
I think that might be a little sigh of relief now for Hone. And finally, a freaking Kartut defender. It's the card he's been waiting for quite some time to this point. That N'Zoth far left, slightly obscured on the left-hand side of his hand. He's been looking for things to be able to fight back against this and not just be playing complete control the entire time.
Also, funnily enough, unlike last game, both players on very similar deck size, which means that the Hakar is, on the surface, just as dangerous to both players.
Yeah.
That's really fun. Create 2 legendaries that are in both players' decks. Or 1 each.
In their lineups, sure.
Yeah, sorry, yeah, I'm in the lineups. Don't know, though.
He definitely didn't mean that. Good
Well,
save.
Purple had a Finley on this game on his board. So
Right, okay. Still not in his deck, is it, though? Is it, Raven?
I listen to actual words. Listen to what I mean, Sol. You forgot the golden rule.
Why can't I just say whatever I want and people assume that it makes sense even if it's nonsense?
Thank you. You finally understand.
Okay.
How many heads is this Shudderwock summon? If there was unlimited board space, it would be so sick. Many is my answer, as Sol's trying to do the maths and be cool.
14? 16? Somewhere in that region.
Big Fat Voodoo, pretty good here.
Big Fat Voodoo.
That's a bit. So just. No, I'm not saying the right words. Now you're just making up ones I'm saying.
Actually, what you said, though.
Big Bad Voodoo.
Yeah.
Being played on the Kartut. It's pretty nice because there's not normally a good way to silence or hex, obviously outside of the Discovery. So Purple's, on average, not really got good choices apart from to just hit through this Kartut, which will then make a nice solid minion.
Right.
A path dimly lit.
It does have, I was talking about it earlier on the walking fountain, which does really have the same effect. Like, there is the thing where you play a minion, you put Big Bad Voodoo on it, and then your opponent goes, all right, go face, right? And then, but walking fountain kind of has that same effect, where even though it does have taunt, you can't just leave a walking fountain alive.
It doesn't have taunt, I think you'll mean, not does. You said does. You're an idiot.
I apologize for my mistake, Craven. See how easy that is? You just admit that you're wrong and you move on. It's very simple.
The first time you've ever admitted you're wrong about anything, so. Ooh, that is good though.
The generated hex?
Yeah, that is actually a thing. That's a big deal. And also, purple is just putting a opponent under a lot of health pressure as well.
More rabbits!
Oh, most importantly, more kobolds, life drinkers, and wasps.
Yeah.
Okay. It's a pretty good Shudderwock. And there's no AoE, there's no scheme. For Hone, which would have been really good at this point. He's already gone through so much AoE in his deck.
Yeah.
And he doesn't have a scheme, which again with Omega Mind as well would have been huge.
Right. He really needed to line up with that Omega Mind. That really could have just been the final blow in this matchup if he was able to full heal while clearing the board with Earthquake or Scheme. Such a big difference for Control Shaman when the AoEs are buried, right? It's like, Hagatha's Scheme when you have it early is the absolute nuts AoE. But when you play it late, you look at you're playing Control Warrior and you top deck to Brawl next turn, compared to playing Control Shaman, you top deck 1 AoE on the next turn.
I think, believe it or not, that trade has made Hone lose this game. I think if he didn't trade, he would have been okay. Because they couldn't have traded off enough minions into the 2/4s, maybe? Oh, I guess he could have powered through them and traded the 1/1 across.
He was on 16, right?
Yeah, he takes 16.
He's just dead to damage from hand either way, whether he trades or not, right?
So I was working out whether purple can trade enough minions away to die to play the 3 minions he needs to play.
But yeah, you can always do that, right?
I think so, yeah.
My hand is too full.
But yeah, anyway, that looks like a lot of damage as far as I'm concerned. Wow, what a game. Purple not only going for that, the mass rabbit approach, but also just plowing through waves and waves of AoE. Hone, I think, had a very reasonable hand, a very reasonable game path, but Purple just kept the waves up almost endlessly.
Yep.
It's insane.
Yeah. I mean, Barista on a hero-powered Desert Hare will do that to a man, Raven. I've only heard legends of the Desert Hare Barista win condition as we take a look inside Purple's soul as he is the winner of the time. Couldn't resist. He is... That win condition is very, very interesting in a lot of the grindy matchups. I've heard people talk about it and how it is just essentially a complete hand refill because Hero Power Bunny is 5 bunnies and then Hero Power Barista is 5 times 2, 10, so you get a full hand of bunnies at the end of the turn. So that is something that you can really do because then again, sure, even if you don't have the activators, which Purple was able to then pick up with Plague of the Murlocs or whatever else, you just play 5 1/1s a turn. That gets there in grindy matchups. Just 5 1/1s every turn for the entire game.
Yeah, what was literally going through my mind as you were talking then was, 1, sort of likes to hear himself talk a lot, but 2, it very much reminds me of why old mid-range Paladin was good when you realize that the buffed hero power just got there versus a lot of slow decks. And they're just 1/1s.
Yeah.
That's all they were.
Yeah.
But it worked very consistently. And yet again, I think I myself was like, oh, well, we've got the hares. Is this just going to be like a 7-hair evolve turn that's required? It's like, nope, you just chip away and never stop. And really, it was just that game was a real eye-opener in terms of just, again, very similar to Alan, like we mentioned, we made comparisons a little bit earlier, where it's just different ways that might not seem that obvious, but clearly, Purple has shown that he just knows what to do.
Yes.
He knows how to win that matchup when it's slow. He knows how to win the matchup if it's fast, and so on, so on. And that's the real strength, and when knowledge like that shows is in a big Swiss tournament like this when 1 minute you are against weird control lineups, 1 minute you're against quad aggro, you need to have this information stored and the execution down.
And I don't want to take any of the sheen off of Alan Numbers yesterday. I do think what he did was a next level of creative beyond what we just saw there. that is the thing. Like, if you've practiced the deck a lot and you have played against some of the really grindy matchups, that is a strat that you will understand how to execute. It's something that you will have gone through. But it's just Purple recognizing the spot he was in, but then also continuing to iterate correctly on that spot that he was in as well, picking up the activators, baristering a bunch of damage back into his hand, timing the Shudder Walk perfectly. But yeah, it's so crucial in this matchup in particular. I'm realizing now, because I'm just kind of learning this matchup on the fly, right? Like, I've not played freaking Quest Shaman versus Control Shaman too much recently. Because they don't have like a tempo small removal tool, you look at something like Dynomatic in Control Warrior, for example, you can't do that same thing against a Dynomatic deck because they'll just tempo you. You play 5/1/1s, they play their Dynomatic, they kill your 5/1/1s. Shaman just doesn't do that. Control Shaman just has no option.
No elemental.
Right, exactly, yeah, exactly. Sandstorm Elemental would just be the nuts against that situation, but Hone's build is so greedy that all it does is massive explosive AoE turns. So all you have to do is play a small board every turn.
Death by 1,000 cuts, isn't it? As
and
opposed to anything
they
else.
have to overcommit in terms of dealing with it.
Okay, well, let's go into the next game and a test of Mage. Mage not been doing so well over the course of the Masters Tour here in Bucharest, but that is not to say Purple handling it doesn't win games, because he's currently 6-2. His score has to be at least okay, or it's been banned, which, you know, arguable. It does its job anyway.
Yes. Mirror Entity, I believe, was the pickup there for Purple. Hone will now consider his options as to what he wants to give away to his opponent. How does a Spirit of the Frog chain work for Purple's deck?
Oh, jeez. So we can go Ray of Frost into Frostbolt, exactly, and then into Arcane Intellect. Arcane Intellect into
Conjurer's Calling, or Polymorph.
No 5.
Oh, we nearly got to the Pocket Galaxy if we had infinite mana on our turn.
And a 5 mana card.
Yes.
It would have been great.
I just drew the Frostbolt anyway, that's no fun.
Lame. What would even Frostbolt? Just like face? It's like, man.
The Stoneclaw totem, apparently. Yeah, thanks for the frog.
Again, like any Highlander deck, as long as they've got the gas, they're probably going to do powerful things.
Yeah.
It's really, the trick for every Highlander deck is keeping going, right? Like, that's the one that, same with Hunter, Paladin. A little bit easier with Mage because it has a very good card draw, but in general, you just don't want to run out of stuff because your stuff on its own is kind of weak. It's when you can just chain all these minions together and spells.
Hone gonna kick off his own frog now, picks up the Witch's Brew. As we mentioned, it's a very, very lean list in terms of spells. If he does start to draw 1 or 2 of those spells naturally, he can really disrupt those draws. Both of those schemes, I believe, were in the opener. The far left one certainly was. I'm not sure if the one in the middle of the hand was drawn on the same turn or 1 turn later, but at the very least, that is 1 7 damage and 1 6 damage AoE in hand right now already.
Yeah, very strange situation where Hone is, I won't say the beatdown with this board, but has the board, is hitting face, so I guess kind of beat down.
He just played Hero Power Desert Hair, just got a bunch of 1/1s. He's just knocking down the door.
Yeah, he's like, well, it just worked for him.
Yeah. Haunting Visions. I'll play Murlocs as well. Oh, of course, yeah, this is the much better outcome. Now he is the beatdown.
So, oh, the tables have turned.
Draws in the second Hex as well before it transforms.
Not too bad either. And, you know, yes, the 3/2s do not draw other Murlocs.
Are you sure about that?
Oh, of course. For something, yeah, I forgot. Okay, it draws him a Murloc. But more importantly, I was meaning that the high attack is much more valuable than any health, because as we can see, they almost, all the Murlocs, if not all the Murlocs, die to a Flame Strike no matter what.
Right.
So you may as well present the high damage and pressure Purple in there. So although Tasty Fin's not mind-blowing, they were definitely not bad there.
Yep. I mean, I'd argue that Tasty Fin was probably the best one he could have got just for that Sludge Slurper pickup. The push is well and truly over, though.
Oh, yeah.
He's going to have to settle in for the long game again, but I think he's very well prepared to do that. He has been doing it for the best part of 2 days up until this point, since we had a, what, 12-hour plus day yesterday? that Hone spent the entire time playing this incredibly greedy lineup.
I can only hope for his own well-being that all he queued into was aggro.
Even then, he's probably sitting around for a while.
Oh,
He's
yeah.
torturing people as he's slowly grinding them out. You don't lose quickly against Control Shaman, even if you're playing aggro.
It's not see, man. Can be answered by Hex. Interestingly enough, Zentimo Hex is a thing.
Yep.
Doesn't necessarily have to do it now with the threat of Conjurer's Call and some other very powerful turns and minions.
Sure.
But wouldn't be the worst Zentimo Hex I've ever seen, just because this bone rate is a bit annoying.
Yep. It's a very awkward board to deal with currently. He always has that second Hex available as well. Maybe because the second Hex is available, you do hold the Zentimo Hex just for some madness happening. Maybe it's needed for like after Pocket Galaxy comes down. Like in Hone's mind, for example, we can see that Purple has like a pretty ugly hand in terms of how powerful his Galaxy would be.
Yeah,
But-
all minions.
Yeah, but maybe from Hone's perspective, he's thinking, well, you know, I might need to react to the disgusting like Luna turn that he has after his Pocket Galaxy is played, where he just plays 1 million expensive minions in one turn.
It's one of those tough situations, isn't it, where if you do it now, you get ahead, I'll call it. But if you save it, it might be really good and high value later, but you might be already so far behind that it's not good enough. It's just a very difficult decision to make, I feel. Especially when Zentimo's involved.
The other option is just no Hex at all, because who cares? It's only a 6/6 in comparison to some of the minions that he does have in the deck. The Death Rattle minions, right? Because he knows it's an Azoth deck on the other side as well.
It's true. Yeah, maybe I'm thrown off here because it's tough. It's an Azoth deck, but it's still Reno Mage, which doesn't need Azoth to kill you.
Sure.
So it's I feel like it's very 50-50.
Yeah. Yeah, I think the Hex is like a very short-term tempo-y based play, and I don't think he really has a hand that just kind of cashes that out at all in the situation. So by greeding the Hex, you can see he just starts to get a little bit more value out of it even immediately this turn if he wants to with the Zentimo Hex. I think this makes perfect sense, honestly, the way
really
that he's
good.
done it.
But Purple did get the Luna's Pocket Galaxy off, with the payoff for the Caligos. So that's just done. 0 mana. Locked in.
That's good to know. I was looking away when that
I know
happened.
you were. That's why I brought it up.
I know you did.
I got you back.
He's such a pro, Raven.
Oh yeah, I do try. Big payoff there.
The nuts. 1 mana, 0/7. What other card in the game can you get 7 stats for 1 mana? Whoa.
Many other minions after Pocket Galaxy? Question mark?
Quiet, you.
I did wonder if Doomsayer is ever worth it this turn. Yeah, I was going to say, is Purple just okay with saying, no, get rid of all this rubbish on the board?
Yeah.
Then when the board's clear, I get to play the game. And one thing that Hone has to be careful of, and it's happened to all of us, is Mage makes a board that's beefy, whether that be Conjurer's Calling board or whatever in terms of a couple of minions. What?
Just going to be the full house of ridiculous removal spells. He's just going to have Trip Earthquakes and a pair of Hagatha schemes or the other way around.
Yeah, and that's the trick, isn't it? Because if Purple has 2 minions on board that are high attack, Alex dead.
Yep.
Right, and that's a real fear, and that happens
never mind.
often, so
I
maybe
stand
he just thinks he's
corrected.
got enough. I mean, 2 schemes and 2 earthquakes. It's a lot of removal.
It is.
Oh, and here we go, though.
This is the
Purple's
turn.
going to be like, right, let's
This
go.
is the turn I was talking about, and Hone realizes, you saw the look on his face, he knows this is bad news.
Is it, though, with that scheme for that must be at 1 million by now?
Yeah, I mean, it's 10 plus, for sure.
If only he could Zephyrus into counterspell. If only Zephyrus was really cool.
Coin Zephyrus Soul of the Forest? Question mark?
Never catch me complaining about that.
Is that stupid? That might be stupid.
I mean, I don't think it is. I don't think it is. He has Alex. That's close to lethal.
Yeah, good point.
That's so crazy.
the line.
Behold the tool
Draws a
of
card.
creation.
At the end, Luna's like, I'm still here.
Yeah.
Remember me. Don't look at Zephyrus. I'm cool. And now... And also, that's a good point actually. Remember that the card top will summon a 2/2 and still be a 3 attack. Because of Reborn.
Yeah, this is
that's lethal, isn't
it's
it?
Alexstrasza lethal against
Oh.
one scheme, yes.
But is Hone going to do 2?
No, it wouldn't be because the board would be full. You couldn't play the Alexstrasza.
Oh, that's true.
Yeah.
What a noob, Purple.
Hate this play now, even though I suggested it.
It's terrible.
Nah, it's definitely look right.
Yeah, it's very good. Because like I said, even if this is double scheme, that's still good for Hone. He wipes the board, very awkward board. But Purple's just ripped a double scheme in one turn. Like that is also sideways good
and
for
this
Purple.
is why, like, I'm so surprised this Rockbiter was chosen. Like, I just, what does this Rockbiter do in comparison to just another big AoE?
Gets him only 21 damage away from lethal. That's
Sure.
all. And here we go, double scheme.
Oh, there was a 2 damage gap between the two schemes. Okay. It was 11 and 13. 13 damage scheme used as a consecration, essentially.
Ooh, Snip Snap, not a bad pickup as well. Also, bear in mind that these Snip Snaps, especially if played separately, will fuel the N'Zoth, which means that it's kind of like just playing a Soul of the Forest again.
Yep.
Not quite as powerful, of course, but not half bad.
Earthquake interacts with this board a lot better than the previous one, but I still don't know if this is necessarily something that needs to be reacted to with an Earthquake. And besides, it is.
And bear in mind as well, like it clears the board, but it is 7 mana. It's effectively a whole turn. And suddenly, Hone had a plethora of AoE not too many turns ago, and now he's just down to an Earthquake.
Yep.
Oh, I forgot about Antonidas. How many cards are in this deck? How can this afford to run this off? What's going on?
It's just a very, very greedy build. It's a lot of the early game cards that have gone down, I believe, to make room for the extra stuff.
So is this ever like Antonidas, Power of Creation, and maybe even just Elemental Evocation? Because what does it even do anymore?
Sure.
No, it's not. You have another Earthquake, Mr. Hone?
Yes, he does. This is it. He is tapped out now of AoE. Interesting. Was that Rockbiter taken before or after the Pocket Galaxy was generated? Because I've just had a thought.
I want to say after, but I confess to not be 100%.
So once Pocket Galaxy was taken, discounted Antonidas into Handful of Burst is something that you start to become scared of with a win condition, right? Because he's winning the long game. He plays Elysiana Shudderwalk. He wins the long game, right? So Purple has to set up a condition to win. So maybe this Rockbite was an insurance policy to go along with his Walking Fountain to make sure that he can actually heal for like huge amounts to get out of range of Antonidas burst conditions.
Really high value Reno coming down too.
Pow! Take that spell damage totem.
Oof. Okay.
It's just N'Zoth time, isn't it?
A part of me wants to say Hakar.
I'm terrified of Hakar. I feel like that's equally likely to kill me. I mean, even though just statistically it isn't, with twice as many cards in the deck.
Oh yeah! Genius play, the Tasty Fins, I forgot.
The double Murloc
Strictly
Tasty
the
Fin.
best outcome.
Yeah. Yeah, this makes sense. Just had to be N'Zoth time.
You require my assistance.
This isn't
There you go.
awfully
Hone
good Blizzard,
gets the
though.
bad news.
Double spell damage. And now, because in Shaman there isn't, or at least in this list, I'm sure people have made lists, there's no way to just repeat N'Zoth, right? There's no N'Zoth recurrence. It means that when all these cards are when all these cards are dead, I guess it has to be Shudderwalk to try and make more of them, because basically my point is Purple with these fireballs and limited healing that's going to be left from home very soon means that even just fireballs to face after an Alex is a decent chance at lethal if he can clear up the post Shudderwalk.
Right.
Yeah, I'm too used to thinking about like bouncing or making copies of N'Zoth. I'm like, oh, you should have won. You've got a lot to answer for, friend.
Also, I was forgetting he still had this Omega Mind left in the deck, so even as like a healing potential, taking a big AoE is just kind of equally likely as a Rockbiter weapon in that position.
You can't see this, but what's I'm saying, he's a big like shifty eyes, like he just doesn't trust what's going on right now.
I just don't understand why there's a Rockbiter weapon in his hand.
Sometimes you just need to get him for 3.
Yeah.
It's great versus this Ziliax. Lines up perfectly against these Wardens. Are they called Wardens there, right?
Violet Warden?
I think so, yeah.
Something like that.
How many tasty things? Wait, where did that Blackhound Gunspire come from?
Huh?
That's not a death rattle! Wait, what?
What just happened?
Was that? Oh, was it an evolve? It's an evolve, right?
Did you just skip an animation?
It's like he's just snuck in with the Murlocs and Cartoons.
It was the evolve lackey, right? But it really looked like it skipped the animation, and then the N'Zoth just spawned it.
Snuck through the crowd of the Murlocs.
How bizarre.
I would love another blizzard right now.
Our tombs.
Wait, what's he doing this turn with the rest of his mana? Okay.
CC? Yeah.
Yep, that's fine. I was just double checking that. I very much doubted it was going to be the case, but if he was ever going to fireball, then you should fireball them in and go face with Reno, right? But if he was going to conjure, it was just a small thing.
Sure.
I didn't think purple was going to mess up, but
Sure.
just got to keep an eye on that stuff, that's all. So now Hagatha definitely helps out a little bit, although this taunt does make things more awkward. Although Gunspire shoots.
How much damage does Gunspire do? I guess 3. Yeah, it's pretty helpful. So one goes in, you play Hagatha. Worst case scenario, you have to smack the Antonidas with your face after the taunts get cleared. It's got to be the line, right?
I think so.
Don't see anything else. Hex is just kind of miserable. I know it seems really weird to unlock is that like this Antonidas has just lived 2 turns and you just had a Hex the whole time that can deal with it, but it's just the rest of the board that's been the problem.
Pressing matters.
Yeah. Well, no, not even more. Like Antonidas is the most pressing problem on the board right now. It's just that like Hex is his whole turn. Essentially, if he'd have played Hex on either of the last 2 turns, he needs to do things that are like a little bit more impressive than that.
No, part of me, it's tough without deck tracker, but a part of me wonders if there's ever a hold.
Full clear. The absolute full clear. Look at that.
Take 6, so there goes Agatha's armor. Is this just still not going to be enough?
I mean, but like if you rip the Alex, first and foremost, you're at least got a chance, right? This needs to be healing now off the top for Hone, but he's overloaded on this turn. Oh, the Fork Lightning! I told you, it's always bad. Fork Lightning always sucks. The Walking Fountain Rockbiter combination that we've been talking about for a very long time as to why there's a Rockbiter in there.
He's got 8 mana, so he can heal.
He can play the Fountain, but the Fountain Rockbiter was the nuts
There was
turn.
also a chance, just to note as well, that the Omega Mind play gets him a damage spell that he lifesteals from.
Sure.
So, it wasn't steady, of course, but now he has Omega Mind Earthquake next turn.
Also, without the Rockbiter, like, how does he trade here? It just doesn't work, right?
Dimly lit.
Yeah.
There's just an Alex Strasser alive, which means he's at 11. He has to double trade into the... I guess he can trade again. He's at 23. Okay, sure. But the Alex is still alive, unless he face tanks it. He goes back down to 15.
He just does, right?
Yeah.
It's either face tank it or it's alive next turn.
Yeah.
And again, he does have Omega Mind next turn, but the problem now is he has to like Omega Mind and just Earthquake his own board.
Yeah.
Which is a thing. He will heal for a lot, and purple's taking fatigue.
Time for games.
The Gunspire with pink. So good. This just makes me happy.
Oh, the nuts.
Does Purple live in a world where all of his Hearthstone games are just like this? It feels like it.
Have you ever watched his stream? Every single game he plays.
But this is like major
Every single
tournament.
game he plays.
Major tournament. One of the last round of Swiss. And Purple's like, this would be pretty good for my stream. Can we get the clips from this?
It's got to be Mind Earthquake, right?
Yes.
It has to be.
The problem is he takes... Oh, he only take 3. It just, he zaps first, would you say?
You want to zap first?
Maximum healing. Just +2 health. No. It's life steal on the 1 spell, isn't it? Sorry. It's not for the turn.
He knows that the hand is exactly Arcane Intellect and 5 Fireballs. So actually he can use the zap if he wants to. It's totally fine. Because he doesn't have to remove any other minions, right? He knows exactly what the hand is, so he's free to do whatever he wants.
But the zap doesn't do it.
Wait, it heals you for extra. Oh, sorry, is that
It's
what
just
you
one
asked?
spell.
No, it's your spells.
Oh,
It's
sorry.
your spells
I
this
went,
turn.
oh, is it? Because you were like, what? And
Yeah,
I was like,
sorry.
oh, is it just 1 spell? And
Yeah,
you're
that's
like,
fine.
yeah.
That's my fault. I just wasn't listening to you. I've got sick of you already and I tuned you out. If that's what you asked, I apologize.
Okay, yeah.
It's your spells this turn and lifesteal.
Yes. Oh, I guess he went to 30. So it
Sure.
doesn't matter.
That's a much better argument.
We suck, basically.
50% of us do.
Yeah. 100% of the time. And now this is... So, like, does Purple just lose? Oh, Purple, look, he can't complain about this. When this is the world he chooses to live in.
Yeah.
I'm almost out of cards.
Haunting Visions can
okay.
find him an answer, but he also has to consider whether playing minions changes the clock here. Because he knows he has 2 more turns. Purple has 1 turn where he does the same again, throws more fireballs, and then the next turn he passes to Purple, he dies. So he has to kill him. Hone has to kill Purple on that clock.
And what is he 3 fatigue next turn or 4?
Don't think it's 4.
So it's 3. He's definitely fatigued twice.
Okay.
Maybe. I'm just wondering whether like Elysiana, just because it's high attack and it's not her car. Oh, what about her car? Oh, I can't.
Dimly lit.
Elysiana just to set up for Rockbiter Elysiana weapon X based on an Elysiana draw.
I want to play Elysiana this turn, I think.
Yeah. You not only do you gain a spell, but you gain
Agreed.
X cards.
Yes.
And there's Rockbiter,
Yes.
and it deals
you can,
7.
You can
right?
put, Witch's Brews or whatever else in your deck. You then also play a huge minion, which puts a clock on Purple, and then you still have the
Frost shot?
opportunity.
Walking Fountain.
Doesn't do anything.
Can he?
Purple has no
there's
minions
no way.
left.
Yeah, I was just thinking there's no thing he can get that gives Purple a minion to trade.
Sure,
Weird
sure.
stuff. Sorry, weird stuff.
It was 3, by the way. The fatigue. Yeah.
Okay. Haunting Visions are cards. And things are about to get decided right now.
So there is... Okay, I saw the 8 mana drop and thought that was the Walking Fountain, but again, it just doesn't do anything. So it has to be Haunting Visions, right? Just to look for answers.
And he gets 2 goes, and most importantly, the second go costs nothing.
Sure.
If the first one whiffs.
Sure.
Excuse me if you heard that. Apologies. Can you mutate 10? Does 10 do anything? I don't think so.
Earthen Might as well, pushing the extra 2 damage, and then the extra 3 he has from the Rockbiter.
And he still gets another Haunting?
Yes. So since none of those heal, you take the ones that deal damage, and then you take your outs for lethal as well instead.
Oh. That was horrible.
So now play minions to look for additional outs if you don't have lethal here, which I don't believe you do. 9, 12... Any spell that overloads adds 2 as well. Fault Lightning, always garbage. Told you.
Is there even a thing?
Just a 1 mana. It's a
What
cheap
even is
elemental
that?
into Witch's Brew.
What's that element? Oh, it's the mage deal damage spell one,
Yeah.
right? For secret. That's going to be it. What a game of Hearthstone. I think a sigh of relief from Purple right now. as he is going to take this game. It got so close. And there were so many things that Home could get from 2 Haunting Visions and from playing a minion, and he got terrible offerings. It's also got his thinking face on.
I mean, I'm just going to say it, and people can decide I'm stupid if they want, but he died with the freaking Rockbiter weapon in his hand, and there was a board that hit him multiple times where there was a freaking Antonidas that he couldn't hex because there was just a board that he needed to AoE as well alongside it. It was a board that died to Earthquake.
Hey, don't look at me. I didn't pick it.
Got no one else to look at. Look at that guy over there. Okay, I'm looking at him. Hey, nice.
Yeah, and again, these are the tough parts when you make a decision, especially a discover decision so early. There isn't an instant response, right? Because you can, if you just pick Rockbite because it kills a 3 health minion that turn, fine, it makes sense. But if you're making a decision like with maybe that far thinking ahead, like yes, you've got to be pretty sure, and it's maybe more. It's exasperated by the fact that that game got so close that 1 AoE would have changed the health totals, maybe. I don't know, and reduced the pressure. It's tough.
Maybe.
Well, he did go back up to 30.
He did,
but the Antonidas
the original wave of fireballs were all used to kill all his minions and got replaced with new fireballs because the Antonidas was still alive. Like, not being able to clear that board lost the game. Yeah. Like, there's no maybe about that.
Okay.
But again,
I was going to say maybe then, just to wind you up.
I know you were. I'm very close to the edge right now, Raven. But the reason why I say, like, I'll just put it out there and people can decide that I'm stupid is, like, there's always the pitfall of results-oriented thinking, right? Where, like, I like that in the beginning, and then there's a result that panned out that seems to, like, validate what I said. But that doesn't make it the right or wrong call over a large sample of games, right? Like,
at the time.
He's played that deck. I haven't, right? Step number 1. So he probably has some kind of concept about what that Rockbiter was supposed to achieve in that matchup or in the game plan that he was trying to execute. And maybe, on average, he's right and I'm wrong, right? Like, you have to iterate on that multiple times. It's just in that particular example, it really looked like another Earthquake would have helped him out in that matchup.
Yeah, well, in the meantime, while Soto continues to ponder the givings of Rockbiter or not, we're going to go to a quick break while we set up the next game. The final game of this series of round number 9. We'll be right back with some more Hearthstone. We are back and ready to give you the thrilling conclusion of Purple versus Hone. Been some crazy games and some crazy decks as well, so everything you could want in one of the last matches of the day at least. And it is now going to not settle down a bit, but a little bit more. It's going to be Combo Priest from Purple versus the Control Shaman there from Hone.
Yeah, and this is a Sonic the Hedgehog matchup for Purple. He's just got to go fast, because if it starts to get to that late game, if the schemes can start to build up, you know, any scheme that wasn't in the opening hand, if it's found on like turn 3, turn 4, turn 5 or whatever, and Purple doesn't get over the line very quickly, that scheme starts to come into play, the Earthquake starts to get into play, but you can play the same dance in this matchup that Purple's been playing very successfully in both of the games against the Shaman so far. It's honestly one of the big weaknesses of the Control Shaman, which is why I go on about it so much, where you just play enough, right? There is no card, there's no Restless Mummy, there's no Dynamatic, there's no card that really punishes you for underdeveloping, and Control decks need that. Control decks can't just play a bunch of big AoE that blows up all your stuff, because then eventually you're just going to go 2 medium-sized minions, and then like, what do you do about that? You have no card that reacts to that situation.
Exactly, yeah. It's like dealing with a wasp nest. You've got to go all or nothing. You can't just take a few out and it's going to do anything that well. Got no ability to just pick off a couple. Let's go into it. Game.
Did that make sense?
Look, it did to me, and that's all that matters. Go game number 5. Hone on the top on that Shaman, and Purple now playing a much more standard deck, which is the Combo Priest.
Undefined opening hand scheme and that Plague of Murlocs, though, which is a very big deal in the matchup for sure. And crucially, that Thunderhead. And that is the card. If there is one that falls into that Restless Mummy, Dynamatic, Super Collider kind of category, looking at equivalents to Control Warrior, cards that punish you for underplaying, Thunderhead is certainly up there as well. Because if you give the opponent a Thunderhead swing turn, then you're going to find yourself very much in trouble.
Priest, not a deck known for fighting from the back foot that well. It's normally so powerful that it's always at minimum equal with its opponent, and then just randomly wins games sometimes. So, we'll see how it can follow up from Hone now. It does have Hagatha's scheme relatively early. Still, Priest can win games much earlier than that scheme will do enough damage, but as long as Hone can hold on, then the scheme is there and it is ticking up now. There's the one in his opening, like from his opening hand, and now a second one. Because it's not only clearing the board once or killing off a few minions, there needs to be just a decimation of the board and say, right, you will not be able to stick any minion going forward. That's how you really beat Priest. But to do that, you got to clear the board once. Now there is 0 mana Voltaic Burst along with this Thunderhead. But I wonder if the Plague is ever okay here? Just because, well, because it's exactly Cleric and a Tolvair that could cause some problems.
Okay.
I would have maybe considered playing Voltaic Burst. Because it cleans up the 2 minions so well.
Well, he has the Thunderhead burst swing turn there,
exactly, right? There is the Thunderhead, though. So it means that as long as Hone is comfortable taking a pretty reasonable amount of damage to be honest this turn, it means that he's like, well, he has a much more powerful turn the turn after. Good follow-up, though, from Purple with this Amit.
Yeah.
It's a little bit scary.
And it was about the most damaging Murloc board you can Plague into. He hits the War Leader and the Grimscale Oracle, so just massively punishing. I think this is going to cost Hone a scheme this turn. 5 damage, the one on the left. I believe 3 damage, the one in the middle. He needs to cut into the health total here.
And you'd go for...
You play the big one.
Why do you play the big one?
Because then you can Voltaic Burst afterwards and clear the Armet out.
Okay. Touche. Because I was going in general with the board, the smaller one felt better. Because it kills the Murlocs, like it's always going to, and then the big one gets bigger and makes up some of the health, even if they gain some health. But you're completely right, the Voltaic Burst was what tips it over the edge there, in terms of being able to kill the Amit, the #1 wanted threat on the board there for the Priest. Purple, in the meantime, just has to start doing these weird turns that I personally hate, and I don't mean I hate him doing this turn, I hate having to make these turns as Priest. Because you know, like Pyro, Topsy, yes, you did some damage. It looks good now for the pressure, but whenever you like top-seeing a pyro and doing weird stuff, it's never really what you want to be doing with a general game plan. It's put him under a lot of pressure, though.
It absolutely has. I believe that is now a 4 damage AoE on the Hagatha scheme in the middle.
So is Hex just better? Hex the ward and be like, well, the pyro kind of keeps any health / damage buff in check.
Yeah.
A little bit, at least.
Yeah.
And you get rid of a 7/7.
Yep. The problem is what happens when Bonsamdi comes down next turn, and I think the answer to that question is yikes. I guess I hope he doesn't have it. If he does, I'll figure it out when I get there, because I don't think he has the luxury to play around it right now.
At least you could argue a Kartut might be enough, because the board won't be super wide. It takes 2 minions to kill a Kartut, right? That's 2 swings. I'm not saying it's an answer. I'm saying it'll buy him some time, maybe.
Coined a totem.
He did.
Fascinating.
After this grueling series for these players, it's going to come down to this. What a way for a series like this to end. I think he has to play Kartut, right? And just hope he heals for 6.
Yep.
Like, on that, looking at it, the Bonsamdi has to go in, right?
Mm-hmm.
There's no damage from hand. Purple's not playing some of the funkier lists with, say, Stormwind Knight.
Sure. He knows 3 out of the 4 cards in his opponent's hand, because spells are also just extremely scary here, because there's a Pyromancer in play.
Yes, that's an important part.
Spells are terrifying, because not only do they help the breakpoint of killing the first Kartut without the Bonsamdi having to go into it, but they also take care of the 3/1 reborn when it comes down afterwards.
I think...
What's the alternate line, though?
Yeah. So the ultimate line might have a bigger payoff if it works, but it's way less likely to pay off.
Haunting Visions into X?
Yeah, that's what I was
X?
thinking. I don't know. Create Zemtimo and have Hex.
Sure.
And even played around it. You have to Hex the Hex, and then there's still a Pyro that lives.
Yeah.
Small things, but... Okay, so now is there any actual way for him to get through with one spell? There isn't, right? Get through for lethal, I mean.
Well, even if they both go off, then he heals to 9.
That's what I mean. Yeah,
So
he can't do the damage and get through.
Right. It's just also like the point in the sequence where the Inner Fire gets cast as well, because you want to buff up one of these minions, attack the 3/4 in one shot to kill it, and then play the Inner Fire, which you can't do. Because if that was the case, so say for example, if you could make big Pyro, trade with the Kartut, like with a 5/5 Pyro, then play Inner Fire, then you'd have the 2 from the Neverset and the 7 from the Bonsamti to go face, but that's not possible because you need to play the Inner Fire first.
Do you ever just like...
I got you, friend.
Okay, I'm just gonna watch now. I'm just gonna see what Purple does. And I'll talk later.
Play Cleric and heal the silence. He doesn't find that out. No? Okay.
In the light's name.
Doesn't find it.
So this was close to what I was going to suggest, of just suck it up, go through the Kartut, but I thought he was going to go for a Psycho Pump to have a Reborn minion to try and be safe through some AoE, such as exactly Hagatha's scheme.
Sure.
And he started the turn with a Psycho Pump. He drew one, started with one. And, you know, there was the Dead Tolve, the Murlocs would be there.
The Murlocs are there,
But most importantly, they have Reborn, which is the key, what I wanted to push.
It's fair.
He didn't go for it, but I think a Reborn X minion is better than this, at least in my mind. I know he could have drawn a, Silence and won the game, but I think most of the time the Reborn is just better, because it's just exactly Earthquake that really destroys you. And then also on top of that, if he did it the other way, then he could have buffed his Bonsamdi to not die to Earthquake. I mean, there's no Earthquake there, by the way.
That Beaked Lightning is the nuts. There were lots of cards that did it. He just needed to do 1 extra point of damage to the Bonsamdi, I believe. I hope I've kept track of this Hagatha scheme correctly. I think it does 6 currently.
Me too, because I've not.
That, I mean, Raven has slipped straight back into the mode. It's like, Sol will take care of it. There you go.
Hey,
nailed it.
This is a luxury.
Nailed it. Every single time. Never doubt myself.
And of course, just going on the note I was putting forward, this would have beaten Reborn.
Yep.
So I'm not going to jump on World.
Yep.
I was right. Well, no, it was just an idea.
But again, I mean, the opposite of what I was saying at the end of the last game, just because in Results World, your point wasn't relevant, doesn't mean that it's not a good point on average,
exactly,
right?
Yeah. Oh, now Zantimo Lightning Bolt isn't the worst thing I've ever seen. What does he go into? He gets the he gets the heal, doesn't he?
Witch's Brew, yeah.
Yeah,
Still
this is
hasn't
only
drawn it.
two. Not the worst thing I've ever seen.
No, only has the mana to play it once this turn, though, alongside it.
Is once really that much different to 2 or 3 times? I see it more as drawing a 3 cost.
Sure.
I mean, to me, this game gets very simple. Either purple can hit him in the face with a minion, or he can't.
Yes.
So, yes, he's got no cards, and yes, he could take a hit from a Psycho Pump if he heals up.
I mean,
But I think
again,
for me, it's just card draw.
right, if he does get to the point where he can take a full turn of Witch's Brew and just not have to worry about the board state, then he just doesn't have to kill every single minion anymore, and that's like a really nice luxury to have, you know?
I think I like this just to guarantee the card draw. Oh.
Doesn't get anything.
Oh, okay. Well, my mistake then.
Both, it's just Haunting Visions, and they've both been played, I
My
believe.
mistake.
I've got more left.
Purple's like, this frog's got a lot to answer for right now.
It does. Beaming Sidekick and the Hex Frog were his revives off those Psycho Pumps. About as low rolly as it gets in that position.
Hone has some very basic stuff himself, right? No spells.
No.
His minions do effectively nothing right now. They are just minions. And Purple pushes 3 damage.
Yep.
He does his Inner Fire. He's used Topsy and he's used 1 Inner Fire. Correct?
Did he use a Topsy?
He did it with a Pyro earlier when I said
Yes,
I hate
correct.
doing this.
Yes.
So there's 1 Inner Fire that snap wins Purple the game.
Yep.
Outside of that, there's obviously
Extra
cards that draw him cards.
Extra
and
arms
there's
as well.
extra arms,
Yeah.
extra arms as well. As usual, just thought I'd double check, is just a one-off.
Mhm.
Yeah, nothing too crazy happening there. Having too many arms to handle. But there is 3 damage. Not it, but Divine Spirit, not necessarily bad. He just does it, right?
Struggling to find a reason you wouldn't.
He either has spells to deal with this, or he doesn't. You may as well Divine Spirit to make him more lasting versus these minions, right? Why not?
Absolutely.
And again, if he gets to do this turn again next turn, he wins. Is he thinking about trading?
He's thinking about silencing, I think.
Are there taunts?
I mean, that's what he's potentially worried about, like even just randomly generated taunts, but also like even if you're going to silence, like what's your silence target this time? Like,
yeah.
pick your poison.
Well, I think because of Divine Spirit, he doesn't have to silence the Thunderhead. Because the 1/1s aren't going to do 12 damage.
Sure. There's currently
So,
4 in play.
So I was
The
checking Zemtimo.
Bolt has been used. Don't only take it as 7 anyway.
I think oh, that's a good one. Shake of the head of purple.
3 plus 1 plus 4 plus 4 makes 12, Raven.
Thank you for the very quick and simple maths lesson. That was the draw for Hone there. And a shake. And you can see
Yeah.
Purple knows, like, this is no surprise. It's more of an upset for him more than anything. He's like, if he just didn't draw that card, he would have been able to take it. But Hone got the Walking Fountain. So close, but so far there. And Hone takes the series in one of the craziest series ever with 2 very weird lineups. But he just about got there with that Control Shaman.
Yeah, last time we saw Purple on stream in a high-profile match, you see him just going over and offering the very sportsman-like handshake. Yeah. Last time we saw him on stream, it was another reverse sweep situation where he was 2-0 up in the playoff finals, and it was actually Bloodyface who ended up reverse sweeping him. So that would have been a very fitting comeback for him if he was able to make the comeback himself from being 2-0 down, but unfortunately he fell at the right hurdle. I know.
Sorry,
he's just crying in the background now. I know. You gave it your best shot. That's all we can ask, Purple.
It was fun to cast, okay?
Yeah. I don't think so, no. He's asking if he missed lethal. I didn't see anything.
Yeah. We'll check afterwards.
Yeah. I'm
And
sure.
then we can laugh.
Ask Twitch chat, Purple. They never spot lethal. We do. Or never miss lethal. Sorry.
There you go.
I wasn't flaming you, Twitch chat. You guys are geniuses.
You just went for them. He's over there, right? Don't look at me. I'm innocent.
I mean, the exact opposite is true. They always spot lethal, even when it's not there.
Yeah.
That's the line.
There's lethal turn 1.
That's the 5 headline. Just call lethal all the time.
Let's all start reverting to defend himself against Twitch chat by just saying emotes.
I'm one of you.
Works.
Don't hurt me. Yeah.
I know these words.
Yeah.
But yes, Hone does take it over Purple. A very, very close series there. And yeah, I don't know. There wasn't anything apart from the Rockbiter discussion that really stands out overall. But for me, I think it's more just the way decks hit each other and things happened. I think both players actually played very, very well.
Yeah, I actually think it was a very entertaining game to watch. I think that's definitely going to be the case when you get kind of those weird and wacky decks going up against each other. And even when we kind of got the most vanilla deck of the series with the Priest coming out at the end.
So dicey.
It still got really silly because Plague of Murlocs introduced all these weird like resurrect possibilities, and then we hit like the Frog and the Beaming Sidekick off the Psychopomp. So like Purple's reactions are always very entertaining to watch. And honestly, just watching Purple navigate those kind of games.
It's great.
It's fantastic because that is his breakfast, lunch, and dinner. Like he does that all day on stream. Just build some random like control-y meme deck with an infinite mulch muncher loop at the end of the deck that ends up winning the game. Like that is really his food and drink in that situation. So there are very few players better at navigating weird situations like that than Purple. But unfortunately, he just wasn't quite able to get over the line. I kind of set up the question of like, is this like the proving ground for Control Shaman in this series? My answer would be no. I still remain spectacularly unimpressed by that deck. But who knows if with a couple of different decision points, maybe it's just out here crushing aggro in all of the other series.
It's
from
not like
Kin
we
as
saw
well,
a normal representation of what you would run into here at the Masters Tour. But that was, although we are in the last round of the day, that is not the last match of the day that you guys get to watch, as we have Falk and Lorinda going to bring you some more matches after this break. We'll be right back with some more Masters Tour Bucharest.